Are you planning on driving in Europe after Brexit? You worried about taking your motorhome, your campervan or your car and how the rule changes might affect you? This video is for you! Hi, I'm Kat from Wandering Bird, where we share tips for motorhome travel across the UK and Europe. Today I want to talk about something which honestly I've been putting off for a long time, which is Brexit. Let's go for the B word, and how the rule changes may affect your plans to travel in Europe after we leave, either with or without a deal. There's a lot of hysteria and there's a lot of bad and false information that's online, and I've never wanted to add to any of that noise. But in the last week alone, I have received 6 different emails from people saying that they have put off making any plan to travel to Europe at all over the next couple of years because they're worried about how the rule changes might affect them. Which is really sad. I don't want anyone's holiday plans to be ruined, and it doesn't need to be. There's nothing that drastic which is happening that should stop you making plans for a couple of weeks holiday in Europe with or without a deal. So, one thing I want to say right at the very start is that when I'm filming this in the middle of January 2020, there has been no deal agreed between the UK and the EU. That doesn't mean there's not going to be one, it just means it hasn't happened yet. So a lot of the things that I'm going to talk about today are based on a worst case scenario, which is a no deal. And we will then become a third country, or there's many different terms for what we will become, and I'll talk about that as we go through. If we do get a deal, a lot of this stuff might actually be better than what we were talking about today, which is great. So for the most up-to-date information, the best place is the gov.uk website. That's where they are going to put out all the information as it happened, or as soon afterwards as they can. I'm also going to be updating the blog post which goes along with this video. The link is below in the bio. If you want to get the most up-to-date information off my website, then that will be updated as soon as I possibly can. But the best place for you to go if you need it quickly is the gov.uk website. In the event of a deal or anything like that, that's where you need to head. Right, I have got a few notes here, so forgive me if I read, but I don't want to say anything which may be incorrect and lead anyone astray. So I am going to keep referring to these to make sure that I'm giving you the correct information. Another thing that I want to say is that there is going to be a transition period. Whether we get a deal or not, there will be a transition period which goes up to the end of 2020. So a lot of this stuff won't actually happen this year anyway. So book your holidays for this year. It's going to be fine. Only if you're going to go away for a long period over the winter, you might have to rethink that. And there isn't a clear plan on that yet. I'll just say that from the upside. If you generally like to travel long term, longer than sort of 3 months, that might affect or be affected. We haven't got a clear answer on that yet. I know that's a question a lot of people are asking. We want to go off and do a year. Can we still do that? Right now, I don't know. Right now, they don't know. we don't know. But I will get to that. I will cover these in as much detail as I can to try and help you make an informed decision on whether or not to book your travel plans. So let us dive in. The first one I'm going to talk about is passports, which should be straightforward for a lot of you. But as it turns out, there's a caveat to a lot of the passport things, which I didn't know about until I started researching this. So, your expiry date on your British passport, and for the sake of confusion, I'm just talking about British citizens travelling to Europe on this. If you're not a British passport holder, a lot of this stuff may not apply to you. I don't know the rules. This is just for British passport holders going to Europe. Your British passport expiry date may not be your actual expiry date in the EU's eyes. You confused? Yeah, so was I. So, the EU only issues passports to their citizens for 10 years. The UK decided not to adopt that EU ruling, and they have been issuing passports for 10 years and a bit. It's not 10.5 years, it's not 10 years and 2 months, it's kind of 10 years and whatever they feel like. There seems to be no rhyme and reason for it. My parents sent off their passports for renewal at the exact same time, on the exact same day, and I think my father got 10 years and 7 months, and my mum got 10 years and 3 months. It makes no sense at all. I'm sure it makes sense to someone somewhere in an official office, but I have no idea why. Anyway, The EU, as far as we can tell, will only accept your passport up to the 10 years from the issue date. So we all know, or most people know, that you have to have a sort of 6-month buffer. If you're going to go travelling, they like you to have at least 6 months left on your expiry date. So that 6 months is going to be counted from the 10 years of the issue date, not 6 months from your expiry date, which is probably going to be longer than 10 years. I'm really hoping that makes sense to you. Let me try and give you an example. So say your passport was issued on the 1st of June 2015. The 10 years would obviously be the 31st of May, 2025. But your passport could well be valid up till the end of 2025 in the UK's eyes. And you can travel around the world on that. That's not an issue. This is just an EU thing that is saying, no, we're going to take it up till the end of May 2025. So you have to have your 6 months before that. So basically, when you come to renew it, you're going to have about somewhere around sort of 3 to 7 months excess that you're going to lose on your passport renewal. That's basically it. You're going to have to renew it a lot earlier than you otherwise would. I'm really hoping that made sense to you. It took me a little while to get my head around it. If you want to see it written out with an example, again, the blog post in the link below has got a little example and things which might make it a little bit easier to follow for you. The obvious thing to do next is pet passports and travelling with a dog, but that's another one that made my head hurt. So let's put in a couple of the easier ones first, and I'll work up to the dog thing. Right, international driving permits. We have driven all around the world, a lot of places around the world, and we have never, ever, ever been asked for an international driving permit. However, it is something which has come up regularly in the discussions between the UK and the EU, and the fact that it is even being mentioned at all makes me think that should the EU or somebody in the EU who is in charge of, I don't know, checking if you're legal to drive, hiring you a vehicle, anything like that, should they be holding a grudge about the fact that we've left, or just be doing it exactly by the book or anything like that, there is a chance that you may be asked for your international driving permit. We decided to get ours, even though, like I say, we've never needed them up till this point. It is our advice to get it. It takes about 10 minutes in the passport. There's a whole blog post on my website with a step-by-step guide with photos. I did it as I was getting my own. It's not difficult. It literally takes 10 minutes. And like I say, we got the two that we need. There are 3 different variations, so get the ones that you need. But again, that blog post will take you all the way through it. Green cards. You will need a green card from your vehicle insurer, whether you've got a motorhome, a campervan, a motorbike, a car, anything like that. You will need to get a green card from the insurer. I would allow about a month. I think ours arrived in about 2 weeks. So yeah, allow yourself a couple of weeks at least so that they can post it through to you. Driving licence. Your driving licence will still be valid for you to drive in the EU. Even though it's got the little EU symbol on it, you don't have to send it off. You don't have to exchange it for one that hasn't got the EU symbol on it. I assume that as they naturally come up for renewal, they will be phased out and they'll be replaced with one that hasn't got the EU symbol on it. But your driving licence, as long as you are legal and it's in date and you're driving, like you're not driving a vehicle or motorhome over 3.5 tonnes when you don't have the correct licence, but your driving licence with the EU symbol on, absolutely fine. And talking of which, the passports, I know there was a lot of hysteria about all your passports were going to have to go blue. That's not a thing. Your passport is absolutely fine as the red stuff. But obviously you won't be able to go through the EU citizen bit in an airport or, they don't have them in the ferries, do they? So you won't be able to go through an EU bit in the airport. Visas. At the moment, a UK citizen does not need a visa to go to Europe, and at the moment there are no plans after Brexit for EU citizens to need a visa to go to Europe. There is going to be more than likely an ETIAS, E-T-I-A-S, which stands for European Travel Information and Authorization Scheme, and that is going to be a visa very similar to the visas that the US have. So obviously, as we're not part of the EU, we are going to need one of those, and they're talking about it coming out in 2021, but there are very few details on it as yet. So that is something which we probably will need to look at in the future, and I'll try and talk about it as and when I know more information. The 3-month limit, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, probably going to be in force. So you've got 3 months, not a problem at all, to travel around Europe. After that point, at the moment, you're going to have to return to the UK, and I believe it is 6 months in any year, but you have to do a 3 month and then have a block. I have tried to find out as much as I possibly can from people who know, and nobody can give me a clear guideline on how long you have to stay back in the UK for, or if you leave the EU and go somewhere, say Morocco, how does that work? Or if you go into Norway, which is outside of the EU main zone thing, how does that work? They've got their own laws. There is very unclear waters on this, but people who generally go down in October and stay till like April are more than likely going to have to either change that or hope that a visa comes out and you can get a 6 month visa, maybe. Yeah, that one's up in the air. I'm sorry, I don't have a clear answer for you. I don't believe a clear answer exists at the moment. GB stickers. So your vehicle will need a GB sticker on the back of your vehicle. And the GB sticker, the little blue one that's on the reg plate that's got the EU symbol on it, that is no longer valid, or will no longer be valid. You can buy them very cheaply off Amazon. Other retailers are available. And they just stick over that GB bit, and it has like the GB flag and stuff on it, so you can do that, that's fine. Or you can just get one of these stickers that go on the back of the car, the big white things, or magnetised if you want to do that. So for car or motorhome, they will all need one of those. The EHIC card, which is the little card that entitles you to free medical treatment in Europe or in the EU, will cease to exist if we don't get a deal. So you won't be able to get free reciprocal treatment. The reciprocal agreement is going to end if there's no deal. So you will need to make sure you have adequate travel insurance to cover you, your family, and make sure that it covers any crazy things you want to do. A lot of it doesn't cover like scuba diving or motorbiking or crazy hikes up big Norwegian mountains. So make sure it covers whatever you're planning on doing. Mobile phones. Your phone will still work in the EU if you have a UK SIM card in it. There is talk of the roaming charges being abolished, the roaming free charges being abolished. Let me rephrase that. Basically, they're going to start charging again for roaming. That was a really, really bad way of putting it. But yes, they're going to start. At the moment, it's mainly free. If you're on a decent deal, it's free. They're talking about that they will no longer be free. You'll have to pay for calls and texts and data again in Europe, like we had to, 10 years ago? It was a while ago now. Some companies are saying they're not going to start doing this. I know 3 is one of them because I'm personally with 3, and they are saying that they're not going to reintroduce roaming charges, which is great. I'm going to stay with them. That makes me happy. Many others haven't yet declared what they're going to do. I think they're all sort of eyeing each other up and seeing what the competition is doing. But make sure you check before you travel with your mobile phone insurer to see what you're going to get charged. There is a cap. I believe it's £45. And basically, once you've reached that limit, you're not allowed to be charged any more than that without them sending you a text saying, you have reached your limit. Do you want to still make calls or whatever? But basically, once you hit that limit, you're not going to be able to use your phone as a phone. You're not going to be able to make calls or get texts or anything like that. It will basically be blocked until you return to the UK or until you accept the fact that your call charges will go higher. So, yeah, it's not an ideal situation, but there hopefully will be companies who will offer a better solution. Okay, UK bank cards. When Brexit was first announced, there was this massive spate through the news of people who were travelling in Europe and they could suddenly no longer use their cards. We don't know what caused it. The cynical people amongst us may say that the Europeans turned off the ability to accept UK bank cards. I don't know if that's true or not. I'm not going to speculate on what happened there. I do know that personally right now I'm in France. I'm using my UK card all the time. It's not an issue, and my UK card hasn't been rejected. Well, I don't think it's ever been rejected actually. I wasn't caught up in that thing. But I haven't had an issue at all. And I've used a credit card and a debit card and they're both fine. I personally don't believe you're going to get stranded in the middle of Europe without any money. But one thing I always say anyway as a safety point is please carry cash with you, and I would suggest maybe carrying a little bit more cash than you might otherwise, just in case something happens and you can't get any money out. You don't want to get stranded, not able to get fuel or food or anything like that. So that would be my advice for that. Okay, travelling with a dog. Oh, that was good timing, babes. Hello. Right, travelling with a dog. Hello. If we don't sign a deal, we will become an unlisted country. If we become an unlisted country, yes, I know it's interesting, isn't it? If we become an unlisted country, the pet passport scheme is going to become invalid. You will then need an animal health certificate, not a pet passport. They're basically the same thing. It drives me nuts, this. I will try and get through it without getting overly angry. But they are basically the same thing. They're just making it harder for everybody. But hey, so to get an animal health certificate, your dog needs to be microchipped. That's the same as it is right now. They need a rabies vaccination, same as they do right now. Once they've had the rabies vaccination, after 30 days, they have to have a blood sample taken to show that the rabies vaccination has taken place. It's really hard to say, rabies vaccination has been successful, basically. That now needs to be sent to an EU lab. Once you hear that that blood sample has been successful, you've got to wait 3 months from the date that the sample was taken before you are allowed to leave the UK. So in Mac's case, because we got him done quite young, he actually needed to have it done 3 times, bless him. It took about 3 months to get a successful blood sample taken. So now you would have to go through that period and then wait the 3 months from the successful blood sample date. So it could take like 5 months to get your dog successfully vaccinated against rabies. So if you're planning on travelling this summer, please go to the vet and start the process down. Good boy. On top of this, an animal health certificate can only be issued 10 days maximum before you travel. So you need to book a visit into your vet, and it needs to be a vet which can issue an animal health certificate. Not all vets can. So you need to make sure you book an appointment with an animal health certificate approved vet up to 10 days before you travel. So you need to take proof of the successful rabies test, your microchip details, and your vaccination or the pet's vaccination records. Once you get your animal health certificate, you have 10 days to go into the EU. You then get allowed 4 months travel within the EU, which is interesting. Not 3 months, 4 months travel around the EU. And you have 4 months from the date of issue that the AHC was issued, not the date that you went into the EU. So you've got 4 months travel from that date. It is unclear, and I have asked DEFRA, I spent a long time on the phone to DEFRA trying to get to the bottom of this, and they do not know at the moment. It is unclear if you enter the EU and then leave the EU, say you want to go to Morocco or somewhere like that, and then obviously need to go back into the EU to go back to the UK, it is unclear how that's going to work, because obviously you're not going to be able to visit your vet to get an animal health certificate. Do you need to reissue or re-get another vet in Morocco to go back into that? They couldn't answer me. I do know that if you are in the UK, you go back to the UK and you want to leave again, even within that 4 month window, you have to get a new animal health certificate. So you can't use the same one for 4 months as many times as you like. You have to get a new one each time. You can see why it drove me nuts. It's like, really? So yeah, it has been unclear what the situation would be leaving the EU on another country and then having to come back in to get back to the UK again. I don't know the answer to that yet. I am keeping an eye on it because that is something I think is going to make people's lives way more difficult. So your process of getting into the EU from the UK is pretty much exactly the same as it is right now. You will just need to have an animal health certificate instead of your pet passport. And it's exactly the same to come back again, the same process as you've got right now. So you'll still need to get the tapeworm treatment done between 1 and 5 days before you travel back to the UK. I believe there will be a section on the animal health certificate, but I haven't physically seen one yet. But that's going to be where the EU vet will have to sign it and say that he's given the tapeworm treatment to your dog. Of course you can travel with other animals as well, but I don't know anything about them. I have just looked into it. Dogs, for obvious reasons, just stop sulking because I told you off. And those are it. Those are the 10 things. Thank you. Never work with children or animals. Is that what we're saying? Okay. So again, this is the worst case scenarios for oh my goodness. If we leave the EU without any form of deal at all, this is what I have found out as being the worst case scenarios. There is a very small chance that we may become what's called a Part 1 listed country if we do get a decent deal. If we get a Part 1, then the pet passport scheme will continue to exist exactly as it does now. Nothing will change. So obviously you'll still need the rabies and the tapeworm and all this other stuff, but it'd be like it is now. So that's probably one of the biggest things that's going to disrupt your holiday plans this year, because as far as I understand it, if we leave, the pet passport scheme will cease to exist pretty much immediately. That doesn't happen. Thank you, Bubby. That's not going to be part of the transition period. I believe it's going to happen pretty much immediately. So go and talk to your vet immediately if you are planning on travelling into Europe this year. And that's it. Those are the top 10 things that I think you really need to know about driving in Europe after Brexit. I very much hope that some sort of deal comes through so that we continue to travel for longer, but me hoping doesn't mean it's going to happen. So I hope you are having a wonderful Wednesday, and I'll put out another video on Sunday. This one's going to be a reader question, buying a motorhome, and they want to know whether they should buy a left-hand drive or a right-hand drive. They're going to be doing most of their travelling in Europe. So I'm going to answer that on Sunday. Until then, I hope you have a wonderful week. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye. We're talking about a good time. We're chasing every moment, all the good nights. We're always looking out, and it's a good life. We go around the world for a show. Hello. Thank you. Yes, I love you too. You are not helping.